Once upon a time, the Kingdom of Portugal had a Spanish princess as its queen. Her name was Carlota Joaquina. She was born in 1775 as a princess of the House of Bourbon, the royal house that ruled over Spain. In her childhood, Carlota studied geography, painting, horse riding, and Catholic religion. Even so, she grew up among liberal ideas of the Enlightenment age in the Spanish royal court, where she enjoyed art performances and cheerful parties. Then she was locked into an arranged political marriage with Prince João of the House of Braganza in Portugal, with hopes that it could strengthen relations between Spain and Portugal. Carlota then moved to Portugal to live with her husband in May 1785, but quickly found herself disliking the new environment in the Portuguese royal court. Royal life in Portugal seemed more boring to her. Unlike in Spain, there were not many exciting occasions and celebrations. Then tragedy struck the Portuguese royals in 1792. João's mother, Queen Maria I, fell sick and became unfit to rule the country. Thus, João reluctantly stepped in as the Prince Regent of Portugal. At the time, Carlota and João hadn't had any children yet. Therefore, if anything were to happen to him, she was second in line to the Portuguese throne. The thing about Carlota was, even though she was the wife of Portugal's ruler, she was still loyal first and foremost to her home country, Spain. It was known that she had been conspiring to remove her husband from power and take over the throne to herself, so that Portugal would be under the dominance of Spain. Thus, some Portuguese were very suspicious of her political motivations. In the late 1700s to 1800s, Portugal was trapped in the complex web of European politics as Napoleonic Wars broke out in 1803. Napoleon Bonaparte wanted Portugal to join the French side, but the Portuguese had been a loyal ally and trading partner of Great Britain since the 14th century. However, João didn't want to make France an enemy either, so he attempted to stay neutral. The stress of maintaining Portugal's independence and neutrality in the war took a toll on João. He fell sick in 1805. Carlota saw this as an opportunity to put her plans in motion. She attempted to have her husband declared insane and unable to rule, so that she could be Princess Regent of Portugal. She even sought support from her parents back in Spain, saying that the Portuguese people loved her and would support her move. Carlota's plan turned out to be a failure and was discovered, further damaging her relationship with João. From then on, the couple lived separately from each other and only appeared together for formal occasions. A year later, in 1807, Napoleon ordered the French military to launch an invasion of Portugal. Carlota and the rest of the royal family were now under threat of capture by enemy forces. Therefore, João decided that the royal family must evacuate the country and seek refuge in its largest colonial territory, Brazil. From there, they could keep governing the Portuguese Empire while finding a way to recover mainland Portugal. Carlota actually wanted to stay in Europe because her home country, Spain, was on good terms with France. She tried resisting and insisted on staying in Portugal, but in the end she accompanied her husband and their children on the long voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. The voyage took several months on overcrowded ships. Eventually, though, they landed on the port of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1807. This was actually the first time ever the Portuguese royal family visited their largest colony. The local Portuguese were quite excited to see them. However, when Carlota stepped off the ship, she was not really impressed with the sights. At the time, Rio de Janeiro was only a small town without much infrastructure to support the royal family. Her husband wanted to turn Rio and the rest of Brazil into a proper modernized society, a seat of government for the Portuguese Empire. Meanwhile, Carlota had ambitions of her own. Her family in Spain was forced to abdicate the throne by the French in 1808, causing confusion within Spanish colonies in America. Carlota saw an opportunity to rule those colonies as the rightful regent until her family could regain the Spanish throne. She wrote letters announcing her intention to the colonies in Argentina, Peru, Chile, and Uruguay, but didn't receive a positive response. Carlota was going to travel to Buenos Aires in Argentina to declare herself as regent of Spanish America, but was blocked by her husband. A few years later, Carlota became Queen of Portugal when her husband was officially crowned as King João VI of Portugal in 1816. At the time, British liberal ideas kept spreading throughout Europe, including Portugal. And in 1820, a liberal uprising broke out in the city of Porto, which quickly spread to all of Portugal. The rebels formed a liberal council, known as the Cortes, and wrote a constitution in 1821 to serve as the legal basis of the new Portuguese political system. To keep his position as king, João accepted the constitution. However, Carlota refused to sign it, because her stubbornness and free soul didn't want to be leashed or held back. She saw the liberal constitution as a form of restriction and humiliation to the monarchy and its dignity. Therefore, Carlota lost her political rights and title as queen. She was then exiled to Ramalhau Palace, far away from Lisbon, where she would stay for the rest of her life. In a letter to her husband, Carlota wrote, "I shall be more free in my banishment than you in your palace. At least I have my liberty to keep me company." Most Portuguese aristocrats opposed the liberalization movement too, including Carlota's favorite son, Miguel. Meanwhile, Carlota's other son, Pedro, was crowned as Emperor of independent Brazil in 1822. There was an anti-liberal conspiracy of Rua Formosa in 1822 to dissolve the Cortes, remove João as king, and replace him with Carlota as queen and Miguel as commander of the army. But the plot didn't succeed. Carlota then influenced Miguel to lead a rebellion against his own father in 1824, opposed the liberalization of Portugal. This was known as the Abrilada Revolt, where Miguel led his troops to imprison his father and try to assume the throne. But this effort failed again, this time due to foreign intervention from Britain and France. João died in 1826 with a case of nausea and vomiting, and there were rumors that Carlota had ordered her husband to be poisoned. He was succeeded by his daughter, Isabel Maria, as the regent of Portugal. Carlota yet again attempted to topple her own daughter and install Miguel as ruler, but again she failed. In her final days, she lived in complete abandonment and poverty. Carlota passed away 4 years later in 1830. She is remembered in history very differently from other princesses and queens of her time. Some say that Carlota was a traitor to Portugal. Others say she had always been an ambitious and cunning throughout her life, and always took a consistent and firm stand in the values that she believed in. Obrigado. Thank you for watching.